There can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Hi, welcome back.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
That's what we're going to talk about. Hitman.
That's it.
His book. Big book.
Big book.
A lot to talk about. There's some funny stuff in it, although he doesn't have the wit that Jericho and Mankind does. But that's not his personality, though.
He is pretty dry.
He's pretty dry and serious. He did have, I liked about growing up and his, there was a big Hart family.
Large.
And they all lived as best they could, taking showers together. His older brothers would pee on him in the shower. Thought that was pretty funny.
I think they said they were like the Addams family. Is that what or the Munsters? Is what he described
they were, and they were flat broke. It talks about them being broke and cheap, and what they how they had to live.
It's like 12 kids.
Yeah, and so how they had to live, and like even when he was young, starting off a wrestler in Puerto Rico, his buddy taught this prostitute down to $10, and Bret Hart goes, "But I only had 8."
Well, I have a funny story similar to that.
Okay.
On a spring break in the 90s, we went to a strip club in Panama, and the three of us split a lap dance because we didn't have enough money for one of us. So we were like, what if we do it for all three of us and we just get a little peekaboo? So, yeah.
Well, there you go.
It was like Groupon before there was Groupon.
Okay. Well, there you go.
The price you pay for drinking natural light.
I'm telling you. He had a great Jim Neidhart story in here. The anvil there about when he was in college at UCLA, got drunk, tied a bed sheet around his neck, and strapped a fire hydrant to his back and jumped out a 3-story dorm room, falling into through the roof, through the ceiling, through his coach's room. That was a crazy man.
Well, for people that, I'm sure they'll know who the Iron Sheik is too. The Iron Sheik has famously said no one could party like him other than Jim the Anvil.
That guy was a partier, which kind of hurt his career, it says here.
Yeah.
They talked about ribs are always fun to read about. It's always fun to hear those. One of the ones I had to put down the book because I was laughing so hard was where they told Jim Neidhart was interested in Emily, one of the daughters at this time, and one of the older Harts were messing with the cat, and she kept cussing down there, "Stop effing with the cat, whoever's effing with the cat." And so she stomps down, Ellie, that was her name, stomps down the steps, and right before she came downstairs, he throws the cat at Jim, so she thinks it's Jim, and she starts cussing Jim out. Jim's like, "What's going on?" Well, Bret hears the story later on, thinks it's funny. They're all working at, is it Stampede Wrestling?
Yep.
For Stu Hart, and he goes, "All right, watch this." He said, "Hey, Jim, I heard about you sticking your finger up the cat's ass." He went, "I'm not doing that." He said, "Well, someone told Stu that that's what you did." He went, "I did not do that." He said, "Stu loves those cats like they were, they're his kids. Basically, they're on even ground as us." He went, "So you better, watch where you step because he is pissed at you right now." And Jim did not want to be, that's his bread and butter. Plus, he kind of like Ellie. He wanted to be in the family.
Right.
So he immediately, first chance he went up to Stu and goes, "Stu, I just want you to know I did not stick my finger up your cat's ass." To which Stu just looked at him like, "What the are you talking about?" And that was extremely funny. And I always liked
the wrestling business when it was the wrestling business.
Yeah.
A carnival.
And then about them driving back and forth on the road, passing other wrestlers and, sticking your butt cheeks against the window. But then he said he didn't know how they did it, but the bushwhackers hid into the trunk of a car. They popped the trunk and it showed them both. One was dry humping the other bushwhacker on the highway. I was like, and Bret Hart was just like, "How'd they get him in the trunk?" It is like, how'd they do that? That was good. And that kind of stuff, he looks fondly, and I'm glad that they remember those type of stories, Yeah. Because I wish we knew, we've talked about this in a podcast about our times at Cards, Coins, Collectibles.
Right.
But how many stories have we forgotten, you think?
Probably as many as the ones we've told, because they've got gray hair now, because we've overtold them, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that's the endearing part about the wrestling business is it was a brotherhood. It was like 16-year-old boys that was like Peter Pan, but it was not Peter Pan. You never grew up.
You never
just
grew up.
acted like a juvenile delinquent.
And had fun doing what you do every night.
Correct.
Another great Jim story was when they were tag team partners for a while, roommates too, because they were related. But Jim would get out drunk every night. He came into the room in the middle of the night, and Bret Hart heard him pissing on the floor. And he said, "That's it. It's done." So the next morning, he told Jim, he's like, "Jim," he was pissed as he's packing his bag, and Jim goes, "Something wrong, Bret?" He was like, "Yes." He said, "You came in here last night drunk, pissing all over the floor." He said, "And it just, we can't do this anymore." He's like, I didn't piss on the floor." He said, "Yes, you did. You pissed all over." He said, "Bret, look, there's no piss on the floor. Where did I piss?" And so Bret looks, and there is a hardwood floor. There's no piss. And he's thinking, well, he did not clean that up. He said, and Bret's like, "Did I just dream it?" He said, "Well, I guess I just dreamed it." And as they went to leave, Jim took his briefcase and opened it up, and it was full of piss. He had pissed in the briefcase. And they got a good laugh out of it. Those kind of stories I really enjoy. About his early days and stuff like that.
Well, I think that's the endearing part of any of the good books that we talk about is that's a lot of people want the dirt, the nasty side of the business, which is, it is interesting to read, but you read those stories and you understand why these guys tough it out and do what they do, because if you can have that much fun every day, and still get by, because how many people get by now when they're miserable? So
yeah,
if you can have that much fun,
true,
pretty good day.
True. And this is one thing I hate that people do. It feels like they have to call. They say, I knew he always knew Steve Austin would be a great wrestler one day. He always knew when he looked at The Rock the first time, he's like, that guy's going to make it big. Okay, that's fine. Maybe it's true, but at the same time, give me a wrestler who didn't make it and say, I thought they were going to be big, but they didn't really peter out there, or they hit their talent level and that's all they went. I'd like to hear that too.
Well, he says that too. He's pretty outspoken about a lot of guys.
Well, I have this note here. He complains about guys who think they're the greatest, but complains when he gets passed up for world champion because he is the obvious choice. Every wrestler, when you look at the dark side of the ring, wrestlers will say, I was the best wrestler there ever was. Everyone, because they got that, and that's fine. That's fine.
Right.
But when he complains about other guys saying that, and then he does the same thing, I'm like, well, Bret.
Well, I think Bret took his character very, very serious, and I think that Bret's character has aged better because of that. Yeah. Because it was a shoot, for lack of a better term, because he definitely believed exactly what he said. He still believes it to this day.
He took pride in being the hero of Canada.
Very much. Yeah.
That's true. But, I mean, at the same time, like I said, a little bit like, he criticizes the newsletters when they said he did a shoddy job, but then quotes the newsletters when they say, and this champion they put above me, the newsletter just tore them apart, which is true. It's all true. Well, Bret, can't have it both ways.
Right. Well, I think that's it. But I think it's good that you can read that and you can surmise that. Like, he didn't write that in a way where you can't make your own opinion.
Yeah, maybe. There's another one. Like I said, a little full of himself in the book. Congratulates himself for not cheating on his wife that one time in Germany, but cheated on her every single time. They weren't married by the time this book came out. They were divorced by then.
They split up.
But he said, but that one night I said, no, you know what? I'm not going to cheat on my wife tonight. Okay, good. That was a good decision, but you did every other time. So I don't know if you're trying to be noble or I don't know what the point of that was. And one thing I wanted to ask you, because I wasn't watching wrestling at this time.
Right.
A lot of people weren't. This is maybe the dark era of, would you say that? For
the early
between
90s?
Between the popular 80s and then the late 90s, there's this dead 90s.
Yeah, when basically the business was hurt by the steroid trial. And
right, that was going on, so everything had to be toned down. And
correct.
But he said that Diesel's run as champion was terrible, and that was the whole reason the business was down. What was Diesel that bad as a champion? I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I don't think the WWF's business was bad because of Diesel. I think the WWF business was bad because they were still doing the same they did a lot of the things the same way that they had for years. And it wasn't working. You could have put anybody in that role.
Yeah, I think so too. Because
it's not like when Bret was champion.
well, he said when he was
on
champion,
fire.
business was on the up and up. And
But, you can look at different houses. Bret's huge overseas, so yeah, his appeal was
that was true.
giant overseas. But at the same time, I just think that the wrestling business, it just needed to evolve. And I don't think you can put that on Kevin Nash's shoulders, because if you say that, then you can easily give Kevin Nash all that credit back for he and Scott.
And he didn't like Scott
Hogan.
Hall either, which is fun to read this now because he would never badmouth Scott Hall now that he's passed. But talks bad about Scott Hall too. So I'm wondering if he just didn't like those two guys.
Well, I think that Scott and Kevin had famously talked about that Bret was the $400,000 champion. It wasn't about the money for Bret. Bret wanted to be the top guy, so Vince could pay Bret less than he paid other champions.
Right. That's true.
Because that was what he viewed as important, which, yes and no, however you want to look at that. But I think that Scott and Kevin overcame that and had enough of that, and they did better the business by leaving and became bigger stars because they left. And Bret became a bigger star.
Because they left.
Right. It helped everybody.
Opened up the way for more spots.
Right. It helped him to develop Bret Hart into a character because he was already Bret Hart.
Right.
They just amplified the fact that he thought he was the best, and
well, he got in the spotlight and he did do a good job.
yeah, he did great as a heel. I mean,
but you can't share. I mean, when you get lost in the shuffle, when there's a lot of big guys there, and
Yeah,
when
of
two big
course.
guys leave, it opens up more spots. People got to step up.
Yep.
So how Shawn Michaels steps up out of the blue from being a tag team guy to.
yeah, Shawn's rise was very methodical, and then
Would you say because of Nash and Hall leaving?
I think that, well, I mean, he was already the champion, and Bret had already been I think it just
was he by
helped.
then? Okay.
I think what it did, it helped. It ushered in a new way of, instead of a big guy working a big man style, Shawn was able to, which is what helped develop the style that a lot of guys work now. That's why they're all 5'10",
Yeah.
because they work like Shawn and they weren't 6'6" trying to work like Scott.
Right. Right. Now, he said that about Shawn Michaels, though, he had to forfeit the belt due to a knee injury that was career-ending, but he just didn't want to give up the belt. That is true? He didn't want to lose to Bret.
He did not want to lose to Bret.
I just didn't get, I guess I forgot to do this. I meant to do this. I never heard Shawn Michaels' version of Bret Hart and why he didn't like him. Have you heard?
Yeah. Shawn's been pretty outspoken about.
So who do you think would be right or wrong? Because Bret Hart obviously hates Shawn Michaels.
Well, I mean, I think that all of that has kind of subsided.
Okay.
They've kind of patched up.
I did
to
see
the
something
best
where they
that
were
they
sitting
could.
together.
Right. It's
in an
really
interview.
good. There's an interview with Jim Ross that probably they did
That's what it was.
10 years ago.
That's what it was.
It's probably one of the best things that WWE did. Now, I'm not saying how authentic that is and how much show business it is, but it's really good.
I saw some of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had an acting career. He was in he keeps saying he was in the Lonesome Dove TV series. I went, oh, well, I love that show. No, he was in the spinoff, The Outlaw Years. And he said they were going to do, everything was going great. They're going to make a season 2. He was going to be a major player in it, one of the stars now because he did so good. And it got canceled, not due to low ratings, but it got canceled because it was just too expensive a budget for season 2. And then here's the problem with that. We can look up the Nielsen ratings now. It got canceled because of low ratings. Sure. And you hear about, people talking about season 2 and everything. So, yeah, our just ratings weren't there. I mean, that's, again, there's a lot of pride.
Well, Bret's a wrestler, and wrestlers know how to work the system. So he's going to say it in a less damning role for him.
And he also claimed, and I want to check you on this, he said that WCW fans just just walked out because they didn't like the Heartbreak Kid. A lot of fans hated him because he was a pretty boy, and And they went. That's why they went to WCW, because they had a better story going on than Shawn Michaels being.
Well, I don't think. Well,
champion.
yeah,
But I don't-
that's one way of looking at it, but I don't think that's it. I think the WWF was hurting because they were developing people the same way. This is the
Right.
same time when, before Hunter was Triple H, he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley as a
Right.
blue blood, and you had
Aristocrat,
pig
yeah.
farmers and a lot of silly,
Yeah, it was still in that silly
dumb, like
gag
It's like, yeah, we got to get past these.
for kids.
Right. You know, and if you got the guy that was the ultimate for kids on the other channel saying all this trash in the ring is what I think of you.
Yeah.
There you've completely flipped that script. And then if you're a Hulkamaniac when you're a little boy and then you see that at 19 and you're like, "Oh, I'm with this. This makes a lot more sense to me."
True.
So-
True. There's another one. They talk about the Montreal Screwjob, but the thing is, though, I've heard so much about it. There wasn't anything new in that chapter, which is fine. Which
Yeah.
is fine. I mean, it's still nice to hear.
Yeah.
But it didn't offer anything we didn't already know. And after that, then the interesting part was WCW, because he said, "Yeah, I got misused," and that's obvious. I think that's a good case. He got misused.
That's
but
an understatement of the book.
if they would have made him champion, he said, coming in, he would have saved WCW. What do you think? I mean, I get the.
I don't think WCW was sunk.
doomed by that time.
Well, I think that when they were bought up with the Time Warner thing, if people go back and look at this, you and I talk a lot of baseball on this podcast. It's about the only sport we talk about.
Right.
If you look at the Braves' payroll in the first half of the 90s and look at their payroll into the early 2000s, it changes drastically. They went from signing free agents and doing a lot of big deals. They were a cost-cutting team.
Yeah.
That was due to being owned by Time Warner, and they
Yeah.
budgeted them.
And
WCW was always a loser until their 4-year run or whatever, and then if you have a bunch of companies under one umbrella, you can shift money around. It's no difference if you have money in your checking and your savings and this,
Right.
and you go, "Well, I'm a rob Peter
Shuffle,
to pay
yeah.
Paul," and that. And I think what they did with WCW is they basically said, "How can we dump all of this debt into this and take away wherever it looks like they have any?"
yeah, you've given me some other books we'll talk about in the future because I haven't finished them yet. But yes, that is accurate, and I'm enjoying those.
Yeah.
Too. But he knew that he talks about the same reasons I hear from everyone else why WCW was messed up. But at the same time, even after complaining like that, he signed a 2-year extension, even though he knew the situation was messed up. Was that because Vince didn't want him?
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, it was
Okay.
Yeah, there was nowhere else. For
I was
him
like,
to
if you're
go.
miserable, why would you? Oh, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, he made more money in WCW the 3 years he was there than he did 10 years of WWF prior to that.
That's true. But listen to him. I mean, he did one on Owen, where he was, how he found out,
Very
what went on
depressing.
there. Very
Sad.
depressing stuff. His family is really messed up because what was going on? People yelling at this, yelling at that, yelling at him for doing interviews after his brother's death. The family thought he was making it all about him. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think
Was he taking advantage of that?
I mean, we're talking a lot about how Bret perceives himself and how he comes across. So
But how did you perceive it? Because I didn't perceive it that way.
I don't think it's that. I think Bret is a public figure,
Yeah, he's the
And you're
he's the
putting
most
him-
popular heart.
and you're putting him out there in the worst situation possible, and he's the spokesperson for over 10 brothers and sisters. Well, somebody's going to have an opinion that they don't think that's right. So
Yeah.
he's destined to take the bullet regardless.
And I did agree with him in the book, saying it's not my fault. But people were calling him for interviews. Yeah, who's related to Owen? Oh, his more popular brother.
Yeah, they're not going to call Keith Hart.
They're not going to call Bruce Hart or anyone, or even Stu. No one wants to talk to. They want to talk to Bret. Bret's the name that everyone knows. So,
Right.
but his family. I mean, oh man, goodness gracious, all the mistreatment of his father and his mother and all this stuff. And it seems, reading that, I got depressed. I was like, goodness, I don't want anything.
Yeah,
feel bad for his
it's
life.
a sad story.
Everyone was so selfish. It seems like he and Owen were the only ones who really had a friendship. I mean, besides Stu, but none of the brothers, like one of them needed a kidney or spleen, and no one wanted to give it.
Well, I think a lot of that, if you look, unfortunately, you take two guys out of that family that became major, major stars, and you had the other brothers who all were local celebrity wrestlers. I mean, that's why, we talked about Jericho's book. They went to the Hart brother training, and nobody was even there from the Hart family.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Keith or Bruce
Keith,
showed
it was
up
Keith who showed up for day one, got
to
their
get the
dues,
money,
and then left.
Yeah, and beat it. So if you look at it from that way, yeah.
Yeah, it was a wild. That's crazy.
It's like
stuff.
a family when someone dies, and something gets divided up, and three people aren't happy because somebody else got something.
But then he makes an odd claim that it's all Vince McMahon's fault that his family is so estranged. And I was thinking, well, I don't really know, because some of the family reported during the lawsuit with.
Well, Vince paid for
Wilson.
Davey Boy to come back and put him through rehab. And,
Yeah.
Signed Davey Boy's son, Junior, and
Right.
He's took care of a lot of the Harts, which he should have. He should have taken care of everybody in that family.
True. But
After that, I'm not saying it's Vince's fault, but it's Vince's company, so it's on Vince's dime to take care of all of it.
And I read this in a book that I'm probably not going to review this in the book that we do when we do the review, so I'll mention it now. But in someone else's book, they said that Vince McMahon had good ideas, he had bad ideas, and what he wanted to do after Owen Hart's death was rappel down from the roof during the opening of Raw himself to show people it was perfectly safe. And they went, probably not, Vince.
Who knows?
I don't know. Who knows? Oh,
I mean, listen, Vince is a fearless human.
Oh yeah, he won't do anything. He won't ask.
You're not going to put Baby in the corner or Vince McMahon.
No, you're not.
So that's just. Did he probably say that? Yeah, probably so. And someone else said, Vince, come on.
Yeah.
Not doing that.
Now he ends the book by claiming, and of course his view may have changed on this, but he's very bitter. Shawn Michaels and Triple H ruined wrestling. Their DX thing, their degenerate thing, telling people to suck it. He's not for any of that. He wasn't for the filth that was on WWF.
This is an old book.
This is an old book. Okay. So that's not true anymore. He's kind of let it
I'm not
slide
saying that. I don't think he thinks highly of those guys.
No, he doesn't.
I think that
not in the book,
I
at
think
least.
he's patched things up as well as he can. I think that's like anybody. If you've gone through a divorce and say you've got kids,
if it's still
you're civil as long as you have to be. But outside of those four walls, when you need to be civil, you don't want to have anything to do with that person because there's just too much water under the bridge. So I don't think there's anything wrong with Bret having harsh feelings. I mean, he can say, yeah, I'm sure he forgives him and has made better of his life. But no, I don't agree with that claim.
Okay.
I don't think they ruined wrestling.
Okay. Well, that's what he says here. So that's why
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But there just seems, and I mean, yes, this was written a long time ago. Years have passed now. He's more calm about it now, I'm guessing. He did talk about the stroke and about coming back. It's fun because some of these you can catch on video. Some of the matches, some of the moments now.
Right.
YouTube has a lot of them. Him going to Australia after his stroke and sitting on a chair, and that's rough to watch. But he wanted to come back to show everyone he was back. But you could tell a little slower in his speech and everything, and still recovering. May have been a little too early.
Well, he has a part in the what we're talking about on the WWF produced thing with Jim Ross, where he talks about Shawn's famous promo when he gave up the belt and he said he wanted to go home because he had lost his smile. And Bret says, I've lost my smile because he's had a stroke.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, that's real. He mentioned that in the book,
That's a shoot. And you can see, he's like, to me, that's what is the endearing part about Bret Hart is whatever the stuff that you may feel like he's a mark for himself or, he's just needs to get over this kind of stuff. No one has went through, and I'm not saying the Montreal Screwjob's not BS because it's a good chance it could be. I'm saying what he went through, even if it's fake, no one else has ever done it to that degree. So the guy has went through a lot. I think I think he's allowed to.
Not
have
even
a
in the
strong
wrestling
opinion.
life, but in his childhood.
And his life went downhill after wrestling. With the bike accident and stuff. I mean, the poor guy is just, he's a shell of himself, and he got out of the business a pretty big star, and his health has just failed him drastically.
Yeah. He's falling apart
look at
now.
Austin having a match at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Bret came back and tried to have a match at WrestleMania. And
When was
sad.
this? I didn't.
Oh, it was years ago. He had a match against Vince.
So
And
they
it was
finally did
just-
that.
Yeah.
He mentions that in the book. He went, hell no, Vince, I'll never do that.
Well,
I understand
Yeah.
things change over time.
Sure.
So he did. How many years ago was that?
I would say at least 5 or 6.
Oh wow!
Maybe
No, I didn't know
probably
that. But
more
it was
than that.
it was really.
It was not a Dave Meltzer 5-star match. No.
Oh
It
wow!
was more like an indie match you would see at your armory.
But see, that's a lot of wrestlers who over time they just their bodies can't take all that wear and tear, but they still move on and they just can't move like they used to.
Sure.
You could look at a lot of points of some older Macho Man stuff. He just as he got older, just
Well, it's like
falling
all
apart.
of us. My God.
well, true. But they still feel like they can. Was it Rowdy Piper, plastic hip, right? Try to
He
do
had
some
at least a
tangles
couple
with
of them.
tangles in the late '90s with
Yeah, he'd had
Hulk
hip
Hogan.
replacement and all that kind of stuff.
which you can't move that well, but I guess it's hard as any professional athlete will tell you, it's hard to let go of the sport.
Well, I not to throw out more famous stuff from other wrestlers, but Jim Ross has famously said there was a quote from Dusty where, you say you never take your jersey off, because if you take your jersey off, you're not going to put it back on.
It's a good quote.
So, you got to stay in the game. It's like working out. The best way to get in shape is to stay in shape. Because if you take time off, it is twice as hard to get back in there.
Like Ric Flair back in 80, and they said, you're over the hill.
Right, yeah.
and then he kept going for
Yeah,
another
in
20,
1990,
30
yeah.
years.
Yeah, when he was
41
41 and he won the Royal Rumble or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and Flair to this day is very, he's cheated death and still around somehow.
Yeah. But, yeah, Bret Hart's lived a hard life, still lives a hard life. Does he seem, and I like I said, I haven't seen anything recent on interviews with him. Does he seem more humble? Is he still bitter at a few things?
I think Bret is still pretty bitter about things. Just the fact that I think it really bothers him, and I'm sure it bothers a lot of guys that, like what has happened to Goldberg in the past 5 or 6 years, with him being able to come back on a very limited schedule and making
tons of money.
a couple of $1 million a shot when
Yeah.
he goes overseas, and and you've got Bret, who, rightly or wrongly, says Goldberg
Ended
killed his
career.
career with a kick.
Do you think that's true? I've heard that debated.
Well, if you watch the match,
Yes.
he's pretty rough, but there's a part where Bret leans back and almost conks his own head because Goldberg doesn't grab his leg when he's putting the figure 4 around the pole like Goldberg is supposed to do.
Right.
So, that's the part of, when guys say they trust each other with their body, is to ensure, don't be too reckless. You've got to pay attention. And I think Goldberg has a history, like the Undertaker match overseas, where he almost drops Undertaker twice on his head. He's sloppy.
Yeah.
When you're a power move guy and everything you do is on high impact, if you miss a little bit, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And if you miss a lot, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You kill guys' careers.
Goldberg doesn't feel like it was his fault. And Bret, like I watched some interviews afterwards.
Well, I think that they can go round and round about that.
Okay. So that's just
I think
right.
Goldberg is a very polarizing person. His career is very polarizing. I think Bret is very polarizing, and you put those two guys together, that's what you get.
True.
You get a lot of finger pokes of,
True.
What's your fault on this?
Yeah.
Your fault on
He
that?
said, she said stuff. Yeah.
Correct.
Overall, though, it was a really good book. It is 500 something pages. That
Yeah,
thing was
we
a
glossed
beast.
over it. Y'all missed a lot of it. It's good.
Yeah. Well,
It is very much
it's
the
a
inner
beast.
workings
Yes.
of the wrestling business.
Each match is talked about in detail. Each step of his career is talked about in detail.
How he,
But
went overseas because one of his brothers backed out at the last moment.
Right.
There's a lot
his
of
his trips overseas and how everyone celebrated him, no matter where he went. Greece, Europe, London.
his
Mexico.
bath that he had in, was it Japan, where the girl.
I don't remember, but I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot there. It was a heck of a read. If you're a Hitman fan, then yeah, you need to read it.
Yeah, I think if you like the really good wrestling books like the Jericho and Foley books,
Yeah.
give it a shot because
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
it's very in depth.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so there you go. That's the Hitman. Check it out. Local libraries, I'm sure, have this or can get it
There's
for you.
libraries still.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought
So I got the Jericho book.
Oh, okay. I didn't know those existed.
Oh,
anymore.
boy. All right, folks. Hey, we'll see you next time on Princes of the Universe.